Only us old-timers remember it, and once in a while you'll hear us mistitle it. What's now known as Luther Preparatory School used to be Northwestern College and Preparatory School here in Watertown. It was that way until about 30 years ago. It was at its time in the beginning, the entirety of the Wisconsin Synods worker training system, the seminary included. Of course, it began in Watertown. Of course, it began with St. Mark's. Let me tell you the story. In the middle 1800s, Watertown and its environs were being flooded with really hundreds of thousands of German immigrants over the entire state. To this day, the state of Wisconsin is the state with the highest percentage German ancestry in the entire United States of America. The biggest problem our church body had back at that time was finding sufficient number of pastors for all the many churches that were being established across the state and beyond our state. It seems that the fellows who were available from Europe didn't want to come over to this side of the world generally, and the men who were being trained in the Eastern Synods were generally too loose with God's Word and not focused enough on salvation through Jesus Christ. Obviously, what we needed to do was to grow our own pastors and teachers. But where? Well, Milwaukee was a logical response. After all, most of the Wisconsin Synods people and most of the Wisconsin Synods churches were there in Milwaukee. But our pastor and Synod President Johannes Boding persuaded the others that Watertown was, of course, the more wholesome alternative. And so it was that Northwestern College and Preparatory School was established here in Watertown in the year 1865. Originally, it was in rented quarters on 4th Street in a house that still has an applicable plaque affixed to its outside. You can see it. It's not really far here from church. Later, in fact, just a short time later, land was purchased and the school was constructed on the hill where Luther Prep still stands. And so it was that the oldest Lutheran high school in the United States to this day had its beginning here in Watertown. For the longest time, it was that we had a preparatory school in Saginaw, Michigan. That's still there. We had a preparatory school and teacher training college in New Ulm, Minnesota. That's where our college for pastors and teachers now is. And here in Watertown, we had a preparatory school and a college trained pastors, Northwestern. As I said, that concluded 30 years ago, which means that Pastor Jensen and I both graduated from Northwestern College here in Watertown. For me, it was 40 years ago this past month, and I was part of the biggest class ever to graduate from Northwestern, 73 of us. That's enough for now, except to remind you to praise the ascended Christ, who, as Ephesians 4:11 and 12 tell us, gave some to be prophets, some to be evangelists, some to be pastors and teachers to prepare God's people for works of service. We do that by reminding you that Christ has ascended to plead and intercede for you and for me on the basis of his blood shed for us on the cross. Have yourself a good start to the week.